Hello and welcome to this installment of the Up in the Sky podcast. Today we're talking to Mickittyyymike. He's a content creator and has been for the last several years, and we talk about his upbringing, how he got into aviation and flight sim at a very young age, and as well as his aspirations, what he does currently, and what he'll do in the future maybe. We also talk a little bit about his most embarrassing moment as a streamer, so you don't want to miss this conversation with Mickittyyymike. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Mickittyyymike.
Yes, sir.
I got to ask first right off the bat, why Mickitty?
You know, I get this question all the time, and it's really the simplest answer. I think it was like 6th or 7th grade. I was in middle school, and I had a couple of really close friends of mine that I rode the bus with on a day-to-day basis to go to school. One of which I still talk to this day. The other one that actually gave me that nickname, I haven't heard from him in some years, but one day she just started calling me that, and I'm like, where did that come from? You know? And she's like, I don't know. I just thought of it, and that's your nickname for me now. And I'm like, all right, cool. So that's sat with me for some time now. And because they were very close friends of mine back then. And when I was sitting here trying to come up with a name for YouTube, initially when I started live streaming, I actually started live streaming on Twitch about 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
And it wasn't anything like it is now where I was streaming 5 or 6 times a week. It was just something like one-off stream once every couple of weeks because of work schedules, so on and so forth. And initially the name was Sin City Simulations to consider Las Vegas. Being called
I guess,
the city of sin,
because that's
right?
where you live. Yeah. Okay.
So,
yeah, I gotcha.
When I started talking about doing YouTube with my fiance and stuff like that, she asked me if I was still going to use the name Sin City Simulations, and I was like, no, it's it doesn't really sound good to the ear, because if you think of, like, if you listen to the way it's said, it's like you hear the S sound 3 times in a row, and it doesn't sound too attractive in my personal opinion. So I was like, there's this nickname I was given back in middle school that I haven't been called in years that actually sounds pretty good for YouTube sense, and I just stuck with it and went with it, you know.
Okay, cool. So middle school, you get the nickname, and then just kind of went from there. Awesome. Yeah. So let me ask you this: did you start with flight simulation? Did you start with something else?
Yeah, I started straight with flight simulation. You know, okay. My oldest brother went to a magnet school out here when he started high school. And he was in the aviation and medical program. At
high school.
Yes, correct. So they offered different kind of like key educational classes that they offered that were benefit directly towards like a trade career, whether it be the medical, aviation, or military aspect, because they had an ROTC program as well, which they still do to this day. Obviously, at some point in time during my brother's career at that school, the aviation program actually got cut, so he was kind of forced into the medical side, and now he's made a very, very, very successful career in the medical field, going all the way from EMT to paramedic to critical care paramedic to flight medic, flying on the helicopters for Mercy Air out here. And now he actually works for that same company, just traveling the world teaching, you know, or traveling the country, I should say, rather, not the world, but he just goes around teaching. So he's had a very successful career, but he's always loved aviation. And that's where I kind of got my interest in it. Is I saw him flying on what was FS 2002 or 2004 back in the day. I had to have
just
been
a little bit a while ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago. You know, you think of it 20 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And he had an old Logitech throttle and joystick, you know, no rudder pedals, nothing like that. And one day he left his sim open went somewhere, and I just sat down on the computer and I started flying, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing, you know, but that's where it went, you know. I started doing that, flying the 2D panels all over the screen, the little Learjet 45s that they had back in those sims, and you know, just flying direct GPS at 40,000 feet in a 7.4, not knowing where the hell I was going. But, you know, that turned into a hobby of mine. But it wasn't until I got on to my first commercial flight as a passenger that I can recollect. I had been on a passenger jet as a young kid, like 3-4 years old, but I don't remember those flights for the life of me.
Right. Yeah.
But in middle school, I was on the jazz band. I was a percussionist growing up, and we got the chance to travel to Washington, D.C. To compete in a competition and see Obama's inauguration when he got elected in '08.
That was a cool experience.
Yeah. So we flew from Vegas direct to DCA, and I was on a U.S. Airways 757, which is why I have such
Airways.
Yeah, this is why I have such a love for the 75, because that's the first passenger jet that I can actually have a recollection of being a passenger on. And
it's funny you mentioned that, because sorry to interrupt, but I also that 75 is probably my favorite airliner, and from my recollection, also the first airliner I remember, the first one I remember being on was a CRJ 200.
Yeah.
Which was the regional hop from my hometown airport to Atlanta. And then we flew a 757 from Atlanta all the way to, I think it was Portland, Oregon. So I do remember that one.
Just the sheer power that the thrust output of those engines, I was on an aisle seat, which I will never fly an aisle seat again. I will pay extra money if I have to sit at a window seat. But I remember the minute the wheels left the ground with those Rolls-Royce engines flying direct to DCA, and we actually shot the river visual. I had no idea,
right,
that what that was back in the day, because I had zero understanding of what the aviation industry was. But we flew. I just remember the aircraft banking left and right, and I'm looking down. I'm like, man, we're like 200 feet above the ground. What are we doing? And then the guy just turns it into the 19 and greases it, and I'm like, I'm here for this. So let me try and figure out what I need to do to make this a reality in my life. Right. And that's just where my love for aviation just skyrocketed. So
gotcha. So yeah, you experienced that. You did some flight sim stuff, and you said you started streaming 5 years ago. Is that right?
I started streaming on Twitch. Yeah, I would say 1920, around there. But I didn't really seriously start streaming until September of 2023 on YouTube, when I first started this channel.
What was your first sim that you were streaming?
Flight Simulator X Steam Edition.
Nice. FSX. Yeah. So I started flight simulation with FSX right when it came out. I actually convinced my parents that I wanted to do this, and I convinced them that I could build my first PC for I had a budget of $500. Back then that would have been $750, $800 now.
Yeah.
And I convinced them to build my own PC, and I built it, and then I got the flight sim, and I was flying with my mouse and keyboard because I didn't have anything else until later on. But so I cut my teeth on FSX. That's what I started with.
Yeah. FSX was definitely the sim that got me. That's the sim that I learned how to do SIDS and star transitions and flying ILSs and RNAV approaches and understanding the Airbus versus the Boeing. That was a sim that really got me going. I flew in FS 2004 for a very long time, but still, I had no idea what I was doing when I was flying that. I was just flying the default 737-400 that they had in there, just trying to figure out how in the hell to get a real world airline as a livery in that sim, trying to figure out copying and pasting stuff and creating new lines in the code so I could get the call sign. The amount of viruses I placed on that computer by doing so, But when I started in Flight Simulator X, my dad really understood that there was a true love for aviation that that had been born in my heart from when I got home from that trip, because I started posting pictures on my wall of the Thunderbirds and commercial jets.
Oh, on your actual physical wall.
Yeah, on my wall in my room.
I thought maybe you were gonna say your MySpace wall or something. I was hold on.
No. Just in my room, my room was covered in aviation, just airplane after airplane. Because back then, really when my love for aviation started was when I had a true dream and aspiration to be a fighter pilot. I wanted to join the Air Force right out of high school. Enlist, go to college, get my bachelor's, and hopefully fly some fighter jets. That took a swift turn when I graduated high school, I'll tell you. But he understood that this was something that I was serious about, and that's when he went out and bought me the full back then what was called the Cytec Flight Pro set. So it was the yoke, the throttle that I still use to this day, and the rudder pedals.
Yep.
And that's when I really started getting serious into flight simming, and it was every day, all the time. The minute I got home from school, like, homework wasn't even a concern to me. It was like, I'm getting on my flight simulator. You know, I got messed with by my friends all the time because, like, I don't understand how you go from being bored at school to being bored on a computer just watching a virtual plane fly. I was like, well, there's a difference in the boredom. You know, I'm actually doing something that I enjoy that you guys would be bored watching. But gosh, I probably put close to 2,500 hours on Flight Simulator X, and then
That's
the sim just started. Yeah, the sim just started becoming old. You know, I was still flying the Aerosoft Airbus jets and the PMDGs. Obviously, I had the I don't remember the company, but there was a developer that made the 737 Classics, the 3, 4, and 500 variants. I cannot remember for the life of me what the name of that company was, but I had those. I was flying those all the time. And yeah, but I made the jump from Flight Simulator X directly to X-Plane 11.
Okay. And so you skipped 10. You just went straight to 11.
Yeah. I went straight to 11. And from there, you know, it was every day. You know, every day I was flying from ages of 11, 12, 13 years old all the way to now, you know.
How old are you now, if you don't mind?
I will be 29 in a little over a month.
Okay. So you've been doing flight sim now for 17 years.
On a serious, like, trying to learn aspect, yeah, about 15 to 16 years. But I've realistically been flying flight simulators for the better part of 25 since early 2000. Yeah.
Basically, since you could sit in the chair and hold it.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm doing this.
You know, because even I didn't realize at the time, because I thought I was just playing a game with my brother, but he was flying FS-98, FS-2002, FS-2004. So when I turned about 8, 9 years old on FS-2004, that's when I was like, yeah, I'm hooked. I'm addicted.
Awesome.
The aviation bug bit me hard.
So you started streaming with FSX, Steam Edition, as you said. Which I still have. You know what? It gives me an idea. I won't say it on here because I don't want to ruin a potential video. But anyway, so you started with FSX streaming on Twitch. Then you went to X-Plane 11 and you're still streaming. Were you still streaming on Twitch at that point, or did you transition to YouTube at that point?
I wasn't streaming at that point in time. I had decided not to, because it just at a point in time of my life when I was considering getting into content creation, Twitch I wasn't really happy with Twitch's platform, and that's not anything against Twitch because they've created some very successful people, but I just wasn't really happy with the platform. It's a very saturated market, and at the time I was just working a job that I really just did not have the time to be serious about content creation. Now my fiance always knew that I wanted to stream because I've been watching Captain Canada for a lot of years, Blue Games, XP72, you know, all the big names that you know, even back in the day. Gosh, what was his name? 757 Spy on Twitch.
Okay.
I was watching a lot of the OG flight sim creators, you know. But my fiance had to help her mom out, and drive to Illinois with her because she was in the process of moving. And this was like late 2023, like September-ish of 2023, where, you know, I just hopped on my computer at like 1 o'clock in the morning. I created a YouTube channel and did a test stream flying in X-Plane 11 from, I think it was LA to San Francisco. I just did a single leg, and I just sat there with no one in the chat, no one watching me. And I just sat there and talked my head off for 2 hours, you know? And that was where
as we do when we start off.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So that's where the birth of the channel happened, you know, and then throughout some time, you know,
is that stream still up?
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the first, one of the first videos, you know, no introduction. It was just straight to the sim, you know, no transition screens, nothing like that. It was just no camera, no overlays. It was just the simulator, you know, and it was like 1:30 in the morning Pacific time, you know, because I've been working graveyard for so long. I was just like, I'm awake. I'm just stream, you know? And, you know, some time had passed, and, you know, I met guys like Owls and CST and, you know, a plethora of other people. And Owls really, his community is really what helped me kickstart the YouTube channel, because a lot of them started coming over and watching me. And, you know, it was definitely something.
When did that kind of happen?
I want to say I met Owls in September of 23. I think I had like maybe 30 subscribers at the time because I had texted all of my family and friends saying, hey, I just created YouTube. You mind just subscribing to me real
subscribe.
quick? You don't have to watch, but I'd like to kind of get the subscriber number up just a little bit. And I remember I jumped into Owl's stream one day, thought the guy was like 22, 23 years old.
Nope.
And then he tells me he's 15. I'm like, what the hell, man? You know,
it's the dreads, man. It's the dreads.
Yeah. You know, we just started talking and we did a couple of shared cockpits together, and he was doing some giveaway streams, and I was like, hey, you know, why not? I'll jump in on this. I'll let you do an extra giveaway and stuff.
So how big was Owls at the time? How many?
I think he had like 4,000 subscribers.
Okay.
Yeah.
So about where you are now.
Yeah. I'm a little under that. I just passed 2,500.
Yeah, you're still yeah.
But he was at about 4,000 subscribers when I met him, 4 or 5 in between there somewhere. I mean, obviously he took off like a bad disease. Like it was, like incredible. His growth was, but we just started, you know, hanging out, and I met a bunch of other guys like Yoham and Isaac and all the guys that are moderators for my channels and members and so on and so forth. And it just kind of took off from there. And I looked at my fiance one day and I was like, you know, I just hit 500 subs. I have the watch time and I'm monetized on YouTube now. I can have people that actually, you know, pay me on a month-to-month basis to be a member on my channel. And it just kept growing from there. You know, I remember I hit a really, really tough patch, when I was like at around 700 or 800 subscribers, where the growth just was next to nothing and the viewership was there. And every content creator, no matter how much you try and say you don't pay attention to it, every content creator pays attention to their numbers, and you won't convince me otherwise. But it was a really hard patch. It was around the time of the Vegas Expo in 2024, around June of last year. And I'm at the expo, you know, I've got custom shirts made. My fiance and I are wearing them. It says my YouTube handle on the back. And I remember I met a bunch of really, really outstanding people there, like Leo Sticks and Dre Sanchez and just a bunch of other people that I sat down. I was like, how in the hell do you guys do this? You know, like, how do you not get so demoralized where you just up and quit? And they were like, you're paying attention to too much that does not matter. It's like, yeah, the views matter. The subscriber count matters. The growth matters, because if you're trying to become a successful content creator, quotationally, that's going to matter. But you just have to stop forcing it. Just be you, you know? And I remember I sat at a bar with Leo Sticks at the Rio, and we just sat and talked, man. And he just gave me some of the best, like, he's like, just stop worrying about becoming the content creator you already are. Just be you, you know? And from there, just skyrocketed, excuse my language.
I'll bleep it out. It's fine. No, that's actually wonderful advice, because that's something that I think a lot of times, I mean, yeah, I've been doing this for, 8 years now. My 8-year anniversary, whatever, was last month. And, you know, I'm not huge. I don't have 100,000 subs or anything like that. And yeah, of course, we're checking numbers. We're looking at numbers. And more recently, I've been more intentional about, you know, what I'm doing. But in reality, it's, you know, if I level off at 10,000, I never grow above 10,000. That's okay with me, because I'm going to be me.
Right.
And people are going to watch me because they want to interact with me, not because they're expecting something different.
Right.
And I think that's a healthy attitude of just be you, and it will go where it needs to go, or where it's going to go.
Yeah.
And whether that's 1 million subscribers or 1,000 subscribers, you know, for those watching, you know, whatever you're wanting to start a channel or whatever, you may not be 1 million subscriber content creator, and it may just be 1,000. But guess what? Those 20 people that are watching you, those are your 20 friends that you get to hang out every time you stream. Yeah,
exactly. And I realized what my problem was back then. It's just I wanted to grow too quickly. You know, I saw a quick uptick in growth between 500 and 800 subs, and I was like, you know, I got to keep this going, you know, because I was too steadfast on becoming a content creator, you know, because I'm very much so in the mindset that if this does take off and it's something that I can focus on full time, that I'm gonna walk through that door if the door is there.
Yeah, of course.
You know, am I gonna force that anymore? No. But back then I was trying to force that because I was, you know, just unhappy with my job. I was happy being on camera and being on stream. I had finally found my confidence on the camera, because everyone that turns the camera on for the first time is just the most awkward individual you have ever met.
Yes.
But, when I got home that night, I was like, I'm going to just do me. I'm just going to be me. And if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't, And again, like I said, I still pay attention to the numbers. I think every content creator out there does. But it's not something that is a growing concern of mine anymore, because I just enjoy being on stream with the chat and with people that have been around on my channel since I've been 60, 70, 100 subs, the guys that fly with me when I stream and stuff like that. Obviously, the last few weeks have been difficult with moving and getting into the new house and setting the office up and stuff like that.
How's that going?
We're good. I'm set up in the new the studio now, or whatever. My roommate is calling
office.
It, but my office. Still just kind of working through the quirks and getting used to the setup and lighting and so on and so forth. As you can see, I've got a window right next to me that's blaring sunlight, the
just
Vegas sunlight into me. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
No one sees it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. But I'm just kind of doing me. I haven't really been able to stream very much so in the last few weeks. But that's going to be changing very shortly. Definitely want to get back into making the content 4, 5, 6 times a week, because I just enjoy doing it.
Right.
There was a point in my channel where it kind of became a bit of a clown show for a little bit. I became the streamer that everybody wants to go and troll. Kind of like the Tim the Tap Man of Flight Simulation. But
it happens.
It's been good, man. I'm very blessed to be in the position that I'm in now. Even though, like I said, I'm not a massively successful content creator, but never in a million years did I ever think I would be sitting in the same room as Captain Canada, Blue Games, CST Gaming, all the guys that been doing this for a while,
Right.
Like I've been a member on Canada's channel for over almost 6 years now. And, being able to meet him at the expo and say what's up and talk to him and all that kind of stuff, and go to World Flight and do the charity streams that we did.
Yep. Wings of Hope.
Yeah. It's just been an incredible journey. I never thought in a million years I'd ever be in this position. I always thought my name would just stay in green on someone's chat, but it's turned into something that's really cool and, very humbling in a good way, if you would, people ask me that all the time. Like, why do you say humbling? And I was like, I don't mean that in like this kind of kicked my, I'm going to sit back a little bit. I mean, humbling in it makes you think about like, you can be successful in this market if you really put the work in. It just makes it feel like your work is paying off, you know? So, because anybody that does content creation, live streaming, video uploading and recording and editing, so on and so forth, knows that it is not easy work. And it's
a
time
slog.
consuming.
It can be a slog. Yeah. Like the other night, side note, when I was doing HG Sims podcast where we had our conversation, I think I went to bed. We were finished recording at like 9:30 my time.
Mm-hmm.
I think I went to bed right after midnight because I was putting all the footage together and whatever, and ran into small problems here and there and putting it all in the timeline and everything else. Didn't even finish it. Got up the next morning and did some more work on it, and then didn't even finish it till that night,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it could be a slog sometimes when you're trying to push out content. Obviously, the more you enjoy it, the easier that slog is.
Yeah.
And that's why I think what you said earlier is don't force it, and don't force yourself into a genre that you don't want to be in.
Exactly.
A lot of people are like, oh, well, I could do that. And then they'll go and try to do that, but they fail because it's not who they are. Yeah.
Right. I mean, for me, like my real world friends, the guys that I've known 15 plus years, they're all big gamers. They all have their computer setups at home and stuff like that, and they've done the want to try and start Twitch thing and start streaming Call of Duty and whatever the game is that's their niche.
Oh, good luck.
Yeah. And they always ask me, they're like, why flight simulation? And I was like, because if I'm being quite honest with you, flight simming is what makes me the happiest when I'm sitting behind my computer screen. To be able to understand and replicate something that is probably one of the most difficult careers to get into.
Very hard. Yeah.
and be able to actually sit down and have productive conversations with people that actually do this for a real world job. Like, I have a very close family friend of mine who is a captain on a 7-3 with American. And he's known me since I started on flight simulation, because he was my oldest brother's best friend, because they went to the same high school. They were in the aviation program together. And to see him go from where he was at to now being a captain at a major U.S. carrier, and be able to sit down and have these conversations with him and understand what he's talking about, and be able to kind of go back and forth with each other about what we like on the Boeing versus the Airbus, and why we like flying into certain airports, and what challenges we've, dealt with in the sim. And, he's taught me so much growing up, that it's just, there's nothing better, in my personal opinion. I can only sit down and play so much Call of Duty or Grand Theft Auto and just be like, all right, I've played enough team deathmatch. I'm ready to move on to something else, because in the flight simulator, there are literally no limitations on where you can go.
All over the world.
Exactly. Yep. So, and for a lot of years, I limited myself on that. I flew religiously in the United States. I didn't go nowhere else. It wasn't until I started live streaming that I started flying in Europe and, China and Japan and so on and so forth. And I was like, man, there's so many other places I could be doing in this sim, like so many cool approaches and challenges that you can go and experience, like the Innsbruck Circle to Land approach, and flying into Frankfurt during a VATSIM event. That is probably one of the most challenging things I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, it's a little different over there too.
Yeah, it's different. It can be intimidating, but like I always just tell people, like, just stay confident and understand that you know what you're doing. Just make sure you're listening. That's the hardest part about flying in Germany, is the listening part, not flying. The flying's the easiest part. You just need to make sure you're listening, because you miss one call, it's not going to go good for you, buddy. I'll promise you that.
Yep. So you mentioned Flight Sim Expo. Both you and I are both media partners of Flight Sim Expo. And are you planning to be there this time?
Yes, I will be there this year. I've already booked my flights. Going to be staying in an Airbnb with a couple of other YouTubers. And just matter of getting the car rented and getting my tickets booked. And I'll be there. I'm flying in Thursday night. So I'll be there all weekend.
So you'll be there Monday the whole, all 3 days. Awesome. Yeah, I think I'm gonna plan to come in on Friday and then leave Saturday night, just because of other obligations I have coming down. But this will actually be my first Flight Sim Expo.
Yeah, it is an incredible experience. Last year was my first expo in Vegas, the 2024 Expo, and it was the most incredible experience I have ever met, because how I put it is, aviation is such a niche market to begin with.
Right.
Then you get into flight simulation, which is even more of a niche hobby. It's at least from when we started simming from back in the day, right? FS 2002, 2004. It's
a little bigger
FSX. Now. Yeah. I mean, you think back on FSX when VATSIM was first a thing. You think about back then, and it's just like, man, there was not a lot of people doing it.
Right.
But then Microsoft drops the bombshell of Microsoft 2020 coming out, and it just becomes this incredible, because to be honest with you, it was them putting it on a console for the first time that made it such a bigger market, because a $300 Xbox One versus a $2,000 computer, a lot of people are going to take, and
bidding on the Xbox Game Pass.
Exactly.
Where if you had a PC, if you had Xbox Game Pass, boom, you have the standard edition right off the bat.
Exactly. And to see where it's gone, to actually, because growing up, like I said, I have a very small group of friends that I have stayed acquainted with throughout my high school years and middle school years. Like one of the guys that's standing in my wedding, I've known him since 6th grade. And I never really could actually sit there and talk to them about my passion for the aviation industry and flight simming. But to be in a room with 5,000 other people that have that exact same drive and passion for the exact same hobby is probably the most incredible experience I've ever had. My fiance went with me last year. She went to the expo with me 2 out of the 3 days, I think she went. And she rocked my YouTube shirt and super supportive of it, man. She had a ton of fun doing it. So but being there and just meeting a bunch of other people and talking to them about their experiences and what they've done and trying out the incredible hardware that's coming out for the simulators. And, that's where I actually first met WinWing, and sat and talked with with Max, in person. He actually gave me the airliner side stick to bring home and test at the expo. He just handed it to me. I was like, awesome. Oh my gosh. So, that's where I got. Gear. Yeah, right. It's like any flight simmer will ever, no matter how cheap the product may be, will geek at a free piece of product, because it's
of course
a free piece of hardware. I mean, because we all know how egregiously expensive this hobby can get.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
I'm just looking around. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you, man, just being in a room filled with people that have the exact same drive and passion and jet fuel running in their blood, no matter whether they've flown a real plane or not, is just such a euphoric experience, because these are actually people that understand why you love the industry so much. Because like I said, like my friends, we'll be outside just hanging out, and I'll look up and see a plane passing overhead, and they're just like, "What in the hell are you looking at?" It's like, I'm looking at the plane, man. Yeah. And they're like, "Cool, it's a plane. It's going somewhere. Back to the conversation, please." And I'm like, "No, it's a little bit more than just that, but I'll let you slide."
Let me bring up my April pass. Let me see. Oh, it says 737.
The amount of times I've opened Flight Radar in front of them trying to see, like, because I'll see a big set of contrails and I'm like, "Yo," or I want to see where this plane is going, and I'll open it up and I'll click on it. Like, "Oh yeah, it's going to London," and they're like, "Cool." You don't get that experience at the expo.
They're not like us, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So at the expo, you're not the only one looking up and looking at the plane.
Right. Everybody is.
Everybody is.
So speaking of aviation, have you ever considered doing it in the real aviation?
Yeah. So I actually was a student pilot after I graduated high school. I started attending a Part 61 flight school. I've been in Vegas since I was 4 years old. I moved to Vegas when I was 4 in 2000, early 2000. Like it was May or June of 2000. Went to school here my entire life. And then my freshman year of high school, unfortunately, my parents had to separate just due to some, typical long, how do I say this? Long relationships that just didn't end up working out for whatever reason. My dad actually ended up moving to Pennsylvania because he worked for QVC at the time. And after I graduated high school, my father and I sat down and had a conversation. He's like, "I know you want to do this, so all I need is for you to be here for me to make that happen." So I packed up my entire life, left all my friends behind, left the girl that I was dating at the time, who's no longer in the picture, but I packed everything up. I told everybody, I was like, "I'm doing this. If you're still here when I get back, cool, but I'm doing this." So I packed up my entire life, moved 2,200 miles across the country and started flying at a Part 61 flight school, about 10 minutes from my dad's house, flying the Cessna.
172?
Yeah, 172. Yeah, I flew two
Sierra
variants.
Or Papa?
I flew two variants. I flew a 172 SP. So glass cockpit, because my dad thought it would have been a good idea to get me in front of a glass cockpit, being the airliners are really going to full glass cockpits. And
right.
But for the days where a lot of my training was VFR related, we were in the 6-pack, flying the old school 6-pack version of the airplane. So I still remember their tail numbers. 901 Quebec Sierra was the old one. It was like a 1960s 172 that had been converted from carbureted to fuel injected. So it was an older plane with a faster engine. It was so much fun to fly. And then
was it straight tail? Was
yes.
it the straight or nice?
Yeah.
So
it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun to fly. And then November 21056. That was the newer Skyhawk that I flew with the glass cockpit with the G1000 in it. I got about 6 months into my training. Unfortunately, being a student pilot, starting as a student pilot in, late September, early October on the East Coast, when the weather is starting to become East Coast winter, fall time. As a student pilot, obviously your regulations to fly are very, very restricted. So anything above 15 knot crosswind and 1,000-foot
Yep.
cloud ceiling, which was
Yep.
a normal day in Pennsylvania.
Right.
I'll tell you. Just any student pilot that lives on the East Coast knows the struggles of getting a flight lesson scheduled and actually flown. So I was in flight school for about 6 months. I got about 14 hours airtime. I was just getting ready
in
to
6 months.
Yeah, I was just start. Yeah, it was so frustrating. I'll tell you.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of the days I just ended up at the airport. We just started doing ground school stuff because we couldn't
Right.
fly. It was about 14 hours in the air, with I think close to 20 landing and takeoff procedures. Gosh, I don't even know how many hours worth of ground school that I did. I actually started moving into chapters that I wasn't supposed to be moving into because we were so ahead in the curriculum
Right.
versus the flying. And unfortunately, at that time, I had flown home for just vacation, just to get back home, see my friends, see the girl that I was dating at the time, see my family. And my mom had become very sick at the time. So, and unfortunately, my dad and I was a dumb teenager. I was 18, 19 years old, thought I had the world sitting in my hands. I was just like, I don't really have to do what you say when I'm not here. When I'm not in Pennsylvania. So I'm going to do me when I'm back in Vegas. And, we unfortunately had a falling out at the time, which has all been handled and said and done with. My dad and I are still very close to this day. But my mom got sick, and, ultimately when I flew home for that 2-3 week vacation from school, ended up me permanently moving back to Vegas. So, when you think back to it, when I think back to it, I think back to the decisions that I made back then. And I wish I would have done things differently because I was so steadfast and focused on my career that I wasn't paying attention to anything else, and my dad was making that investment in helping me get there. And I wasn't grateful that he was actually doing that, so when I think back to that, I think of the decisions that I made, and, it's helped me mold into the person that I am now. But, you still think back and it's like, man, what I would do to get back behind the controls of that plane,
Yeah.
But I don't hold it against anybody. I made my decisions, and, I made my bed. I got to lay in it, so I keep my passion for the industry alive through flight simming, and, being able to fly and teach people on the sim that are new to it and talk about my experiences. Cause I'm hoping that one day, even if I get one message on Discord or one ping on Instagram or something like that saying, hey, I listened to your story and I was going through the same thing. You kind of gave me an idea of, let me get back to what really matters, and see them succeed. That's more than enough for me,
Oh, 100%. Have you thought about continuing your flight training, or?
Yeah, I have. I've actually tried, I think 4 or 5 times since I made the move permanently back to Vegas to take the loan out to go to a 141 school. But the cost is just so egregiously expensive. Back in the day when I was 17, 18 years old, an ATP full 0 to hero quotationally program was, still a lot of money, $70,000, $80,000, but now you're $110,000, $120,000 easily, and that's just for school. That's not even counting the cost of living, your bills, what you have to pay back to the bank, so on and so forth. So, first time I applied is I didn't have any established credit. Second time I applied was I had established credit, but not enough income. And I was like, how am I supposed to go to school full time and you want a full time income as well? Like, that's just unrealistic expectation, especially.
It's the bank, man.
Exactly. It's the bank. It's just like, especially at a 141 school where it's like I either pass this chapter of the curriculum or I'm out, And then the third time I applied was lack of a cosigner. And then the fourth time I applied was cosigner had lack of financial responsibility. I was like, What? Like, what do you guys want?
Obviously,
you want to chop my arm off, man. Like,
I'm not supposed to do this. Like,
yeah, it's like you sit there and you sit there like, okay, bro, like I'm done ruining my credit because you guys won't give me this loan, you know? And like, understandably, it's like, you know, I was a young 20-year-old adult making $10 an hour working for an ambulance company. So I kind of just, you know, I didn't necessarily make the decision to stop pursuing it because I hear all the time of people in their mid-30s that leave everything that they're doing to pursue aviation because even if you become a commercial pilot at the age of 35, that's still a 30-year career to based off of FAA regulations.
Yeah,
exactly. You know, because I think they actually, if I'm not mistaken, they've been debating raising the mandatory retirement to 68. I think it's something like that.
Both with airliners and air traffic controllers. They've been talking about raising it. Of course, air traffic controllers are younger. Their mandatory retirement is younger.
Definitely.
But they have considered pushing it just because of, need of the industry.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's definitely a dream that is still very much alive. But it's a dream that if it does not come to fruition, it's not something that will affect the rest of my life. It'll just be a major lesson that I will be able to teach to many more people saying, if this is something that you want to do, make sure you do it. Don't be like me and don't regret that you never did it again. You know, even if it's 20 years down the line and I just decide to go and get my private instrument so I can go rent a Cessna or a Beechcraft or something like that and just do some scenic flying. That'll be enough for me. Will I still want more to be able to push the thrusters of a 320 to toga and, you know, blast off of it at an international airport? Yeah. But, you know, realistically, when you start thinking about the expectation of it and what you would have to do, I mean, I'm getting married in 3 months, you know, we're talking about starting to have kids and so on and so forth. It's just like, can I realistically drop everything that I'm doing in my life right now to pursue this? And my fiance, no matter what I decide, is 100% supportive of that because she knows that this is what I would love to do for the rest of my life. I remember, bless her heart, she looked at me one day. She's like, "What about Europe?" And she's like, I was like, "What do you mean Europe?" And she's like, "Well, I hear airlines out there pay for people to go to training if you get hired by them." And I'm like, "Yeah, but
there's a lot of other things that are going on in Europe too."
Yeah, you're talking about London, Spain. We're talking about going to somewhere we never been. You know, I was like, if I start my career out there, understand my career stays there for probably 9 times out of 10. It's probably going to stay there because I'm going to be contractually obligated to fly for an airline out there. But she was like, "Oh, so what? It's just 5 years." I'm like, "Well, we'll figure it out." So
just 5 years of reliability better.
I mean, it's good having, you know, someone that is very
wanting to push,
understanding and wants to push the dream. But you know, it's just not a realistic aspiration of mine right now. It's not something that I can realistically pursue at this point in time.
I know a guy who, at the age of 45, has dropped everything and had been flying for a number of years, just private, you know, built up hours, whatever, and dropped everything, made the call to a regional, got an interview, went to the interview and got accepted, and he'll be going to the academy in just about a couple months.
Nice.
So there's always a chance
that
that it can happen.
Exactly. And I'm a very faithful person. You know, I don't tend to talk about my faith with a lot of people on YouTube because I try my best not to offend or make people uncomfortable during my conversations, but I'm a very faithful person. I understand that big man upstairs got his plan for me. You know, I've got a Bible verse tattooed on my arm, which obviously I know it's against the Bible, but we're in 2025. But
not the new covenant. You're fine.
So I have a Bible verse tatted on my arm. It's Jeremiah 29:11, which says, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope in a future." Yep. And I read that every day, you know, and I wake up understanding that today's a new day and the possibilities are endless. And if big man upstairs opens that door for me, that is 100% a door I will walk through. You know, I have other dreams and aspirations that I've always wanted to pursue. Like I tried becoming a police officer in my mid-20s because law enforcement has also been something.
That.
Yeah. So
not
you understand.
that anymore.
Yeah. So you understand. And luckily I live in a city where the police departments out here are very, very well respected. It's not something you will ever see on the news, or police being talked about in the negative light, or them doing things that they're not supposed to be doing, and people taking power of the badge and so on. And so, which is why I work in the industry that I work in now. I work in armed security. I got into this job because I was pursuing a law enforcement career after I had made the decision in my head that aviation was never going to happen. But I went through EMT school. I tried following my brother's footsteps and becoming a paramedic. I graduated EMT school, never got nationally certified because I did a few ride-alongs, and I was like, no, sir, This is not for me. I'm here to go to people that actually need an ambulance and not just take someone to the hospital because they say they want to go because they stubbed their toe. Sorry.
Yeah. My dad was a 38 years EMT paramedic, fire captain, being a battalion chief. So I heard many of those stories. So I fully understand. Yeah. That not wanting to be the bus.
Yeah. The day people started calling EMTs and paramedics ambulance drivers, and I was like, oh no, ma'am, I'm so sorry. We do much more than just drive this thing.
To them, you don't. You just drive this. That's all it is.
I'm a certified medical technician. It's just, especially in the private sector here in Vegas, man, private sector EMTs and paramedics make absolutely terrible money on an hourly basis. I work in security and I make more money than an EMT does, than an EMT does, excuse me. It is asinine.
It's not just there.
Yeah,
it's everywhere. They make horrible money. They deal with the worst of society.
Yeah.
And same with firefighters, same with police officers. I mean, thankfully some of them are starting to get paid more, but you deal with the worst of humanity on a daily basis, and then you get paid one of the worst in humanity. Obviously not the worst. There's definitely jobs that get paid less, but
it's
for what you're dealing with, it deserves more.
Yeah, it's definitely unfortunate, to see where the private sector for EMS and all. Luckily, I think the country has turned to a very pro law enforcement side now versus what it was some years ago. And especially in my state, law enforcement's paid very well out here because they're trained by some of the best agencies in the country. And they have an expectation that when that badge gets pinned, that they have an oath to uphold and a constitution to uphold. And that is every police officer that I have ever met in the city that I live in is so for the community, and being transparent and understanding that there are a lot of people out there that have distrust in our law enforcement. And every police officer I've met from the major agency out here in Vegas, Las Vegas Metro, are some of the most upstanding people I've ever met in my life. Now, granted, not saying that everyone is perfect.
Right. There's always bad apples.
Always bad apples. But I remember when I was going through EMT school, at the time I was working for an ambulance agency that my brother worked for. And I worked in the supply department. So my job was to make sure that the ambulances were up to the health district's code before the paramedics and EMTs showed up to take them out to run calls in the 911 system. Because there needs to be a certain amount of equipment on board that ambulance in order for it to meet the code and be accepted as an advanced life support ambulance. So that was my job. And I freaking loved that job, man. As I'm back at ambulances every day, learning the medical terminology and learning about the different types of equipment and so on and so forth. And I remember the first time I went on a ride along with one of the paramedic supervisors I had become friends with. He actually let me drive to one of the calls because I was emergency vehicle certified because as a supply technician, I have to operate them on a day-to-day basis. So I was lights and sirens trained. My brother actually trained me. That was one of the coolest days of my life. Me and my brother sitting in an ambulance flying lights and sirens down an EVOC course was so much fun.
Yep. I did that just in a police cruiser.
Yeah. Oh, police EVOC. Nothing compared to what you do in an ambulance. An ambulance EVOC, like, it's cool. You're running lights and sirens, but you're just doing serpentines through cones and you're doing lane changes and so on and so forth. Man, you do EVOC in a police cruiser, man. Man, y'all are flying 80 mile an hour. You're drifting down courses and so on and so forth. And I remember
it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I bet. I had a ton of fun in the ambulance one. I could only imagine law enforcement.
What's funny, the tires they put on there are like almost completely bare. And so like the whole
back
drifting and stuff is like sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's
Yeah.
not. But that's intentional, so you get
Yeah.
used to like you losing traction, how to correct and all that.
Exactly, yeah. And I remember when we got the call, the call popped up on our MDT, and it was a code 3 call, so we had to go lights and sirens, and the paramedic looked at me, he's like, "All right, let's go." So I flipped the lights and sirens on. I have not felt an adrenaline rush like that since the first time I took off in a Cessna. I felt the exact same adrenaline rush from pulling back on the stick of that Cessna and going airborne for the first time when I hit those lights and sirens. So I love first response and I love aviation. Those are my two niches that I absolutely love. And I remember we got to that call and we took the patient to the hospital, and I was in the back of the ambulance with the EMT doing the patient assessment and doing care and all that kind of stuff, because I was a student at the time, so I was legally allowed to practice under the supervision of somebody. And it was so much fun. It was so much fun. So, but when I started pursuing law enforcement, I left EMS and went over to the security side and was like, oh, I'm become a security guard, and this will help me become a police officer. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, not really. So back onto the flight sim stuff. So obviously now your stream, I think you shoot for 2 or 3 times a week.
At a minimum,
what you shoot for. Yeah. And you're mainly Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020.
Correct.
And so with all the streaming that you've done, and I asked this of HD Sim, what was the either craziest or most embarrassing event that occurred while you streamed?
Oh man. Oh gosh, there have been many. I don't want to necessarily say I've had any embarrassing moments, but I have had some moments where I've looked back and I'm like, Mike, get control of yourself, dude. Like the day that I tried flying I think the most recent one was the day I tried flying the FS Labs 321 for the first time. I was on the ground in Vegas for an hour and 30 minutes trying to get my throttles binded after I had already done it. I did it the night before. My throttles were supposed to be binded. They were working fine. And then I load into the sim. I hit go live in OBS. And then all of a sudden, everything freaking breaks. So I'm sitting there getting frustrated beyond belief, and I'm sitting here. I'm like, why is this not working? And I finally get it to a point where I can actually taxi the airplane and I can take off and stuff like that. But the throttles are not binded to the detents that they're supposed to be detent. So, and if you fly with the Thrustmaster TCA Airbus pack, the throttles, the detents are like they click in and you can feel the detent going there. So I'm clicking the detent on my physical throttle, but it's not going into the freaking detent of the airplane, right? So I'm flying the throttles because it becomes like riding a bike to you. You know exactly where the throttle position is when your hands are on it. And if it's not doing it the way it's supposed to be doing it in the sim, it just feels not natural to you, right? So I remember as soon as I took off and got airborne, I kept hearing the freaking click of the detent in the airplane of the sim. And it just started clicking, and clicking. And it's like someone sitting next to you and just poking you. Like just ever so slightly. And eventually you just get so annoyed that you just blow up. And I remember as soon as I made that left turn off of the ones in Vegas and we started climbing out to Oakland, and I kept hearing that poke of that freaking detent, I just started like ripping my throttles back and forth. I'm like, just freaking work. And I was getting so frustrated. I actually had someone come in my chat that day. It was like, "Oh, you have the temperament of someone that I want to watch. Have a good day." I was like, "Oh, I don't care what you have to say right now. I'm trying to fix this, man." I was like, "Just add insult to injury, man. I don't need you in here right now. Get the hell out of here." That's probably the most recent one, but I've had plenty of moments you've seen where chat is just beyond belief trolling the hell out of me. I remember one stream I put on clown music the entire stream because the stream just went to all hell. Everybody was just trolling me beyond belief. So I was like, this is a clown show. I'm putting on clown music, So, but we have a good time. We have a good time.
Awesome. Well, Mickittyyymike, I do appreciate you coming on and talking to me.
Anytime.
And everything, and really cool and fascinating story. How you got into flight sim with the brother just leaving it up there and hopping on, and then that bug got you when you're flying the 757, which is awesome because that's my favorite airliner. So, are you looking forward to the Bluebirds 757?
Gosh, you have no idea, man. You have no idea. I've pre-warned my chat. I have pre-warned the YouTube. I was like, when the Bluebird 75 hits my simulator and my NDA is lifted, I am going to be flying that for about a month straight. So if you're not a 75 fan, you might want to go fly something else.
Wait for a month, then come back.
Yeah. The 757 holds a very, very special place in my heart. It's the first cockpit of a commercial jet that I ever got to sit in and talk to a captain. It's the first plane I ever flew first class on. Back at Delta old days when it was the very controversial Delta livery. Was on that plane, first time ever getting to sit and talk to a 75 captain for one of the arguably the best airline in the country. And being able to sit here and say is like, I've been a passenger on a 75 flying the River Visual, man. You flex on me, It's just it's an airplane that is so near and dear to my heart because it's where my birth of love for aviation was born. And I'm so sad that the airplane's getting phased out, but
it's all right. It'll live on, and they'll still be flying. I mean, I don't think Trump's getting rid of his anytime soon.
No.
It'll still fly on for sure, even if it ends up flying just as a demonstrator.
Freight,
so I don't
all
think
that stuff. Yeah,
I don't think it's going away anytime soon. They are phasing out of the airlines, but I don't think it's phasing out completely.
Yeah, I actually got to meet Bluebird at the Expo last year in Vegas. I sat and talked for maybe 30 seconds because they were on their way to go do something, and I just introduced myself and said, "Hey, man, I'm incredibly excited for your product." And then, just at a chance, one of their developers that's working on the 7.6 hopped into my chat one night, and we started talking, and he was like, "Hey, if you really want to be a part of the team, just email this person and, sell yourself."
Why don't they jump in my chat?
Right. Yeah. Well, to be fair, he didn't tell me that in on his own terms. I was bugging the hell out of him. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, "Hey, man, what can I do?" And he's like, "If you really want to try and do this, this is who you need to talk to." So, I emailed Shervin from Bluebird and said, "Hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. Here's my channel. Let me know if this is something is realistic enough." And luckily, at the time that I sent that email is when they started putting their team together. Nice. And they started making their announcements in Discord about their timeline and the Flight Sim Expo and so on and so forth. So I am under full non-disclosure signed agreement.
Of course,
with yes. Bluebird. So I can't talk about anything that I know. But got some good stuff coming. I'm so looking forward to it, man. Yeah, I think the hype of the 7.5 is going to be even bigger than the 350.
All right. Well, that's awesome to hear. Any final words before we wrap this up?
Just per the usual, man, I appreciate you having me on and allowing me to sit here and talk and, give you my story to all those that come across this video. And, if you're looking to get into content creation, just understand no matter the game you play, it's not the game that's being played, it's the person that's being watched. So the best piece of advice I ever got if you get into this is when you first start, just talk to the camera as if you got 1,000 people watching you, even if the number says 0. It's an incredibly humbling experience when you get people that are there to support you and what you want to do. So just keep motivated and stay strong, and eventually that it'll take off, because I never thought it would, but it did. And even I still got a long way to go, but it's getting there. So I appreciate you, Micah, for having me on. It's an awesome. We're going to have to do this again. Might have to do a second installment,
Oh yeah, man. Totally 100% behind it. Yeah. I hope this, and the whole goal with this, and of course, it's not to ingratiate myself or anything, but one of the things that I know a guy that does this kind of stuff on real aviation. Mm-hmm. And actually I've been to AirVenture and Sun and Fun on his crew filming, because I'm a videographer on the side. I've been doing that for 13 years. And I was like, we don't have this in the flight sim side. Like we don't have the one-on-one, let's talk about their story.
Is it a podcast? Do you mind me asking? Is it a podcast?
So technically, yes. You talking about what I shoot for?
Yeah. Is that what you're referencing?
Well, I'm not. I don't hide it. So it's Dan Milliken with Taking Off.
Okay, I'm familiar. Yeah,
Yeah, he does. What I'm shooting for him, but Stowe is not really taking off. It's in the hangar, which is
Gotcha.
his sit down talks with people. But anyway, so I was like, we don't really have that in flight sim. I mean, there's a couple people that do some podcast type stuff. Captain Jackson, great guy. He does it occasionally. I was like, I feel like we need. There's more to the story in a concise way, because obviously if you watch, if you go and watch your stream, you're going to get everything you just said, but strung out over 15, 20 different streams, right?
Yeah, exactly right.
And so I was like, let me see if I can't, bring these people in and make this happen.
Definitely, yeah.
So far, I'm loving it. Even like you're the second guest I've had on, and the first one was great. This was awesome. So I definitely appreciate you coming on and having this conversation.
Yeah.
And we'll totally do it again. 100%.
Yeah. I was asking because it reminds me a lot of a podcast that I listen to called Pilot to Pilot. It's
I know it. Yeah.
Awesome
I know
podcast. It reminds me a lot of that. So yeah, definitely, man. If you ever want to do a second installment, I'm 100% down for it. I love these sit down conversations, because if you guys watch me enough, those that are watching this video, you guys know I can talk someone's ear off. It's not my fault. My father's from New York.
I gotta cap him. I gotta. We hit the hour mark. We gotta stop.
I could talk for hours, man. But yeah, I really do appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to Micah's channel down below. Leave a comment down below. Hit the notification bell. And follow his channel. It's an awesome guy. I'm looking forward to meeting you at the expo. We definitely are gonna have to grab a drink or something like that and have some more
100%.
conversation for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Now, I messed this up in the first one, but I'm gonna have you, as we say goodbye. Do you know my catchphrase?
I don't. Unfortunately,
I don't know my catchphrase.
I do not.
So you stop watching right before it ends, as most people do, and that's totally fine. Do you have a catchphrase?
Yeah, I say from the virtual flight deck. I'll see you. That's my stream ending thing.
Awesome. Yeah. So for me, it's thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you all next time up in the sky.
Oh yeah, love to see it. Love to see it.
Yeah. That's why it's called Up in the Sky Podcast.
Oh yeah. See, you put two and two together. I like that. I like that a lot.
I did. Yeah, I did.
I don't know why I started saying from the virtual flight deck, but with just one stream I said it, and people were like, "I like that." And I was like, "All right,
it just stuck."
It just stuck, So.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mike, so much for coming on. I appreciate it. And for those who haven't or don't know this guy, you definitely got to go watch his streams. Go subscribe to his channel, like he said with me. Like it, all that stuff. Subscribe, bell notification. I choose all notifications, all that. He's a fantastic dude, all around great guy. So definitely go and support him in any way that you can. But thanks again, Mike, for coming on, and we'll see you all next time.
Anytime.
Up in the sky.
Appreciate you, man.